Perfect. Thank you, Julia, and welcome everybody to this episode of the intersection of gender and mobility, focusing on socioeconomic status from the Indian perspective. I'm really pleased to be the host of these webinars and to start these conversations to understand how women or people identifying as women experience mobility and the intersectional ways that we all move through our cities. As has been mentioned prior to the recording, but also it will be mentioned in the chat, we are looking to see if there's other topics you'd like to hear about. So please feel free to give your ideas and we can explore how we can possibly cover those topics. And if you have experts that you think are vital in this conversation to provide space for their voice, please let us know. And you can do that through Women Mobilize Women whenever you feel. With that, today is the third of 3 episodes focusing on the intersectionality of gender and mobility. And today I'm very pleased to be joined by Sonali, Vyas, and Sarika Panda to discuss the Indian perspective. And what we will do now is we will play the recording of my conversations with Sonali and Sarika. And after that, we will come back for some questions. And of course, if you have questions throughout the conversation or throughout the video, please throw them in the chat and we'll try to address them later. But with that, I'll pass it on to the team to start the video and we'll see you afterwards.
Welcome, everybody. As we know, as we've learned in the previous episodes, the intersection of identities and experiences produces different experiences and perspectives for mobility for different people. So as a result, a gender-sensitive mobility transition is about more than one's identified gender, impacted also by one's age, ability, economic status, and geographic location, among a bunch of other myriad of intersectionalities. So in this Women Mobilize Women webinar series, we're going to dive into those topics a little bit further, really looking at the intersectionality of gender and mobility over a series of 30-minute episodes. My name is Melissa Bruntlett, and I'm an inclusive mobility advocate and Women Mobilize Women ambassador. And in this episode, we'll discuss gender, mobility, and the socioeconomic status of individuals with a perspective from India. When we focus solely on gendered experiences of transport, we can often overlook the economic impact of access to transport and mobility, or the lack thereof, not just in terms of the cost of transport itself, but also the lack of essential services such as education, healthcare, and employment. And it's only by understanding this intersection of experiences that we can start to identify solutions. So today, I'm very happy to be joined by Sonali, Vyas, Associate Director at SafetyPin, and Sarika Panda, Director of Nagarro and the founder, Trustee of Raahgiri Foundation, to discuss the Indian experience and including looking at the barriers to access as well as successful solutions in helping to create more inclusive mobility. If you'd like to read more about Sonali and Sarika, you can see their bios in the episode description. But first off, Sonali and Sarika, welcome and thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa. Happy to be here.
Wonderful. So before I jump into my questions, can you give us a perspective of where you both are located geographically in India? Because, you know, as we know, India is a large country, and so there's different experiences depending on where you are. So can you just give a sense of where you're located?
Yeah, so I'm located in Gurugram, which is a suburb, basically a satellite city of next to Delhi, in northern part of India.
Yeah, so Sarika and I are both located in Gurugram, nearby.
Okay.
It's part of a capital region.
Perfect. Okay. So then going into my first question, Sarika, I'll start with you. How does cost impact the access to mobility for everyone, but particularly for women in India?
You know, cost acts as a really significant role when it comes to mobility in India, impacting both accessibility and affordability, especially, you know, if there is lack of public transport system and lack of walking and cycling infrastructure, then it's not just that you are safely using mobility, but you cannot afford to buy a vehicle, which is also again not sustainable to own a vehicle, every household or every person in the household owning a vehicle. But in India, most 80% people are dependent on either walking or cycling or using public transport system. But somehow costs really play a very deterrent role when, especially with the women, where they cannot even afford to travel by metro, for example. Spending that 70 rupees to 100 rupees every day to travel for your work or for socializing or for health. And especially city like Gurgaon, where we don't have much public transport system, then people are dependent on informal public transport, the paratransit, auto rickshaws, e-rickshaws, where again you end up paying a bigger amount. So that actually, impacts employability of women, accessibility to healthcare, accessibility to education, and further various socioeconomic disparities. So it really plays very, very important role when it comes to mobility, especially for women in India.
And Sonali, adding to that, I know with Safety Pin, you look also at the experience of not just women, but everyone in the city. Does cost come into some of the research that you all are doing in terms of that impact?
Yes, definitely. So like Sarika said, affordability is the biggest challenge because it adds significant amount of cost, which is a significant amount of cost in terms of household expenditure. And since in India, many women, like for a household, if a household has one vehicle, it is mostly used by men. So women are often, are forced to, or let's say they have a limited option, and they are dependent on public transport. And if the public transport is inaccessible and expensive, then that cost is very high. Giving an example from a recent study that was done in Bangalore. So recently, Karnataka government, it's a South Indian state in India, where Karnataka government have made buses free for women all throughout the state. And in Bangalore, a study found that when they did it, not only ridership went up in terms for women, but also women were able to save up to $16 in terms of their household expenditure. So that really plays a big role.
And, it's obviously the cost is a barrier to accessing transport and mobility. But I think what we don't talk about a lot is the knock-on effects when people don't have access or when cost is a barrier. Sonali, can you talk a bit about what some of those knock-on effects are for women and for their households when they can't access mobility and transport in the same way?
Yes. So this one of the major thing is access to education and employment opportunities. Because in many studies like Safety Pin has done many studies where we have found that women are letting go of higher job opportunities, like a job that pays well, but it is located very far from their house, or even they are letting go of their, even in terms of growth opportunities. Suppose that public transport is not available from their house to a school or a college, then they let go of that opportunity. So it plays a really big role in terms of their personal growth as well as professional growth. And and the number is pretty high. It's in a recent study by ORF, the number was 52% women reported that they have let go of such opportunities. And it's a high cost because mobility is the first medium for a woman to enjoy a city or actually exercise a right to the city.
Yeah. Sonali, Sarika, can you add to that a little?
Yeah, so just adding to what Sonali said, finally, women ending up taking up lower paying jobs, and then they compromise with their careers, and then it has a chain of negative impacts also, not just that you have a lower paid job, but it also your right the equal right at your home, at workplace, and multiple negative impacts that they face due to this compromise, but because of lack of mobility. Second thing also, it's restrict mobility. This restriction in mobility lead to social isolation also, and you know you're not able to go for socializing, or you not able to go to any nearby public spaces or anything. That's also gives little bit of restriction, where mostly women faces this kind of challenges. And another thing is like, no, because of this lack of public transport, and as we know that walking, cycling is not safe in our country, plus weather condition, plus multiple other factors, security, the street harassment or anything, that also leads to dropout from your education, especially the girls who drop out from schools and colleges because of this, which again lead to a lot of other negative impact like mental health issues or community engagement, or that equality or inclusivity that you should be feeling in your city or at your home especially. So, and it leads to vulnerability, or multiple kind of harassment and violence from your home to in the society. So it's a bit frustrating that how mobility lead to so many other negative impacts, and it's a very very essential services a city should give, but we are really lacking behind on providing accessible, affordable, safe public transport or walking, cycling infrastructure for everyone, especially for women and children.
Yeah,
I just want to add.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more knock-on effect. In a study done by Just Jobs Network in Karnataka, they found that when they made public transport free for women, women were using. Women were going to hospitals, accessing healthcare facilities also. And when they were asked that why were you not going to these hospitals before, they said that it is expensive. It was expensive for them to travel before, but now that they have a little bit of money and now that transport is free, they were accessing it. So it is playing a role in maternal health also, and it was a fantastic thing that actually came out from a policy.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because we both discussed obviously the knock-on effects on education, on finding work, and Sonali now just talking about healthcare access. But we don't necessarily discuss even, and not just in India, but globally, we don't discuss what that means in terms of if women are taking part-time work or lower paying work, they're also not traveling during peak hours anymore. And so the way that mobility is available to them in terms of time also impacts that accessibility, because most transport networks, at least that I'm aware of, tend to focus on those peak hours. And by taking lower paid work, part-time work, you're not necessarily working traditional hours anymore. So go ahead.
No, yeah, absolutely. That's the challenge, and that's the where we need to address, right? That this is the need, and it cannot be compromised. It cannot be, the government has to provide this basic mobility services for the citizens, especially for the women, for creating that equal opportunity for them. That's the key.
And since care work, it mostly falls on women, and women often trip chain it. So the public transport planning has to be done around the needs and their mobility patterns, and not just the traditional way where we have been planning our cities. Our cities need to be much more dense, as well as we have discussed these concepts of 15-minute city or care blocks from Bogota. So these are very interesting concepts that are coming out. And another initiative that a government can take is the request bus stop facility, which has been in India in two states we have tried that, in Delhi as well as Hyderabad, where a woman can request the conductor or a bus, like after evening hours or after dark hours, say 8 p.m. or 9 p.m., to stop the bus near her house and not just the designated bus stop. So it plays a role in terms of ensuring safety as well as safe last mile connectivity.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a great feature. And I know in places where I've lived where that's been an option when I was younger, it's certainly something to consider as beyond, you're already paying this price to take this transport. You have access to this mobility system, but it doesn't always get you where you need to go. And so having those systems in place that get you a little bit closer to home creates more of an incentive for the transport, even with the cost. So from both of you, what are some solutions beyond, this is actually a great solution that we've just discussed, but some other solutions that have been employed to help address those barriers? So we've talked about the free buses and we've talked about specialized drop-off, but have there been other things, whether that's provincially, city focused, or at the national level, that have been successful in addressing some of those barriers for women, be it just individual trips for education, employment, or otherwise, or trips with families that have made it a little bit, taken that economic burden off of families a little bit more?
Yeah. So can I go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have given example from Rajasthan or Bangalore. So in Delhi, the pink metro, or especially the free for metro service free for women, has really boosted the women ridership and the job opportunity for women. Also, Delhi government has provided free bus service also, where the rider seats have grown up to 50 to 60% more. More women started using the bus system for their various trips for healthcare, education, or for employability. So it has proven that if you are providing subsidized or free public transport system, we should be by all the government across the world, because that's the basic services where that taxpayer money should be used, giving accessible, affordable, say public transport system. Also adding to it how a safe infrastructure like safe footpath and cycle track also actually increase women employability, how they get accessible to at least traveling to nearby places where they can walk and cycle safely. So a few examples we have seen in multiple cities like Pune, Bangalore, Chennai, now in Gurugram and Delhi, Bhubaneswar. So many women using these trips now for their work, not just going to work, but for example, I'm giving an example, the street vendors, as women as street vendors has been increased because of this. A lot of women are into entrepreneurship now, the informal sector entrepreneurship, which basically this kind of street helps them, giving this kind of opportunity, and I can give you like Bhubaneswar has provided so much of this. Now they have not just excellent public transport system for women. It's free, but it's not just Bhubaneswar, but entire Odisha. They have provided buses for women, and especially for students. They have given subsidy for those traveling, very minimal price, where now students are accessible to schools and colleges. Also for the healthcare, I got to know a lot of this anecdotes and impressive stories from student community, especially women. Also, they are providing women drivers now. Even the electric buses they are providing, 50% of them are women drivers. So it is giving them opportunity. More public transport means more opportunity for women to be in that sector as a providers also, as a service providers also. So I think lot of initiatives has been taken. We now need to see that how we can scale it up in that particular state and city, also across the country. how we can adopt some of these best practices. Second thing, the app, Septipin app, how it has provided women to access to multiple things through this app, and they know that where they feel safe or not, and accordingly they can plan their trip. All these methods, policy changes, infrastructure improvement, including buses, auto rickshaw, ride shares, all this gives that addresses the comfort and safety concerns which women and public in general face when they use mobility, and especially the micro mobility initiatives that promoting cycling and walking is the great thing that we should scale it up as soon as possible in entire country. Even the smart city mission in our country, is addressing and closely looking into all these matters, where the entire focus is on safe mobility to women and children and disabled people. The entire focus is on that, and we have got some very good results so far, but of course long way to go, and lot of improvement needed, lot of people needed to work on each city, because the scale of India, and it's not just few organizations. We need hundreds of organizations like us who can work closely and help government closely for achieving these targets.
So actually, to add to what all the great initiatives that Sarika has been talking about, I think I can talk about few government programs that have been very instrumental in India. So Bihar and Odisha, these are two east states in two states in eastern part of India, where they have provided cycles to girl students so that they don't drop out in the secondary schools. And this scheme has been going on for meritorious students, and it has boosted the girls' access to education. So that has been really good, and it's been going on from some years. The other initiative that I can think of is very important in terms of saving the cost as well as integration is multimodal integration apps that have come, because in mega cities you take more than one form of transport. It's metro, bus, and especially cities like Chennai, Delhi, Bangalore, all these mega cities of India, they do need a multimodal integration app where you can plan your journey. And it is so that the whole journey is seamless and you don't feel the burden of planning it, burden of the cost. And in some ways, you can have one card which can run. And Indian government is working on that one mobility card, one India, one mobility card, which is going to be a great. And given that it's a technology, it's a digital age, and technology it's going to be the game changer. So I think those are the good initiatives. And last but not the least, what Sarika is talking about, safe streets, safe and inclusive streets. Raahgiri Foundation has been really working so hard in Gurugram, and they have made a great change where we are now seeing a movement. We are now talking about making pavements, because more than 50% of women in India, they either walk or cycle. So we have to provide infrastructure for them and afford it. And each one of us walks. We may have our personal vehicles, but everyone is a pedestrian. So from that angle, we have to, and now that Indian government is focusing on streets for people, we are seeing that change in many Indian cities. So that gives me a lot of hope. So I think these are a couple of initiatives that I can think of.
Yeah, you've both given some excellent examples, but it just, I think, comes back to these core ideas of the access to transport from an economic perspective is not just about getting on a metro or a bus or informal transport or paratransport, but it's also that access to cycling. Not everyone can afford a bike. So the initiative, Sonali, that you mentioned is a great way to not just provide that mode of mobility for somebody, but also make sure that they still have access to the economic system through education and then therefore through employment. And Sarika, the examples of, and I think this is something we need to talk about more, we are seeing more and more about this, how to integrate women better into the transport sector as operators, as administrators, as professionals like the three of us, that it not just provides that economic opportunity for women, but it also builds that knowledge into the system where they can give those experiences to others to help understand what are the barriers, because historically maybe the men doing it might not understand what women experience through care trips, or just that barrier to education in the beginning, or barrier to healthcare services. But yeah, no, I think it's very interesting to hear about the experiences from you both and from India, because I think we forget sometimes in the transport sector how complicated and complex, not complicated, but really complex the systems are, especially in mega cities in India. But there are some great solutions that can be translated to other parts of the world as well. So thank you both for sharing. Are there any last thoughts that you'd like to provide to our audience, just to think about, you know, what gender and mobility looks like in India or in your experiences internationally?
Yeah, so you know, the inspiration is the city you are sitting right now. We take inspiration from the city and from you, you know, and we try to do something like that. But as I said, long way to go. But we really need to work aggressively. I am using this word aggressively because we have less time, and the situation is getting worse. We can see that cities are getting more polluted, more traffic deaths we can see in our cities. So I think next 5 years is very, very critical for India and almost all cities in India to focus on improving public transport systems, especially buses, and walking and cycling, robust walking and cycling infrastructure. Entire city should have a network of cycling and walking infrastructure, so that we can create more livable, you know, affordable, equitable, accessible cities. And that is the only way we can sustain, and we can be moved towards a developed country. Without this, we will not able to achieve what we are thinking of achieving in terms of social growth or economic growth of our country. First thing to address basic mobility services to the citizens of the country.
So in India, in the transport sector, when we talk about, women are mostly absent. We don't see women. That's why we don't plan for women. That's a very general perspective that everybody comes and say it. And I think that with the initiative, with the affirmative hiring policies in transport sector, where we are having women drivers, conductors in front of us, I'm hoping that more and more women will be encouraged to join this male-dominated sector, and, you know, break this myth that this job is only for people who can work long hours, or they cannot, or they, just physical labor and all. So I feel that that myth needs to be broken. We need to make this sector more gender inclusive, and as well as we need to have more and more women taking ownership, as well as, you know, they need to claim these public streets. They need to come more and more in public spaces and own it up. So that's when we can make our cities, you know, safer, inclusive, and equitable for everyone.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah, I've really enjoyed listening. I love the opportunity to learn about different places. I haven't had the opportunity to travel to India myself, and hope to in the near future, but to be able to learn more and broaden my perspectives of what to think about. I really appreciate the discussion, and thank you both for joining us. And if people would like to connect with you to ask more questions, how can they do that?
So we are very much in our social media, like active, and also our email IDs can be provided. So we can connect through LinkedIn or Twitter, and through emails also, to share and learn from each other. And also, Melissa, we are looking forward to host you in India. So, so hopefully we will be visiting soon and see you soon in India.
Yes, yes. I think yeah, definitely. People who would like to know more about Safety Pin, they can check our website and or my LinkedIn, my email ID. We can provide it in the chat box. As well as we have an app called My Safety Pin, which is free on Apple and Android app, where you can download it and do a safety audit, look at data around the city. So we have data from about 75 cities globally. So people can just look at the safety information, like which city, which area does it safe according to people. So it's a great app that you can explore.
Wonderful. Thank you both. Thank you for everyone who joined us, and we will see you again next time.
Thank you so much.
Welcome back, everyone. I believe that because they're so busy, Sonali and Sarika were not able to join for the Q&A part of today, but I thought we might switch it up because we've got a few people from varying global perspectives, and so I thought maybe it would be handy to start a discussion if anyone is interested. So if anyone has a question they'd really like to ask about mobility and transport, there was a comment, or sorry, mobility and gender. There was a comment in the chat about how the conversation was really focusing on accessibility and affordability. And I wonder if anyone is sort of working in this space and would like to, is comfortable sharing some of their thoughts or perspectives. Just raise your hand or turn your mic on, go for it. Yeah, go ahead, Anya.
Thank you. My name is Anya, and I'm working for the Bund-Länder program, which is an English German government and federal states program. And there we are currently together with the state of Berlin, which is represented here in the call even from Manuel Risch, and also with our implementing partner, Asia Berlin Forum, which is represented here by Martin Rauschenberger. And together, I'm coming to the point of gender mobility now in a second. And together we want to also, very importantly, with the Sumaka program, the big mobility program in India, and also with the Green Living Lab in India, in Bangalore, we want to do an open innovation process in Bangalore, in India, on the topic of gender and mobility. Actually, it's already the second phase. We did that last year, and Sonali from Safety Pin was one of the participants in the cohort to pitch her solutions or their solutions. So I think I speak in the name of the whole project group. We are so amazed to have this episode on gender and mobility in India here. So we are super happy to connect to all of you and to others. So if you have any hints or whatever. So we are now heavily preparing that event. And I already see that Manuel also wants to say something, because one, of course, of the goals is to, because we were talking about Sonali was talking about how important it is to see what other cities are doing. So here, what is the city of Bangalore doing? What is the city of Berlin doing? Is part of the overall networking on gender mobility there. There is even an MOU between the government of Karnataka and the government of Berlin, where mobility is a focus. So we are happy to have now the even more concrete focus on gender and mobility, and looking forward to that and to any networks coming out of that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Manuel, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, thank you very much for the nice introduction, Anya. So I don't need to repeat that. We have a UMBI project going on to tackle the same issue. I have actually a question, because also for me this whole issue is quite new. But I was wondering if there are specific problems, so to say, or specific things that occur only in India or in some Indian regions that are very specific for that country, for that region, which don't occur, like, let's say, in other either Western countries or in other developing countries? And to add to that question, are there maybe any specific solutions already that are implemented in India, which are not, which we don't see in other countries? For example, they already mentioned the 15-minute cities, that everything is in the reach between 15 minutes. I mean, this is also something that we learn about, or that we hear from other cities like Paris or other European cities. But this would be quite interesting to me. Like, are there any specific challenges and are there specific solutions already from India?
Great question. Do we have anyone on the call who's a little more experienced with the Indian perspective that maybe can provide some insight now? Otherwise, they can connect with you, I'm sure, in other ways via LinkedIn or otherwise. Any hands? No, doesn't seem that way. But I think that's a great point. And I think one of the things, Manuel, that I would add to that is that perhaps it might seem like it's an Indian challenge or Indian unique challenge, but I think one of the things that we've learned through these processes is that oftentimes there are other places around the world that are having similar challenges. And so one of the things that I think is quite interesting about this network is that we get to learn from other global cities about what their challenges are and what we can apply in different contexts. Martin?
Yeah, I was actually quite amazed of like at that very teeny tiny small takeaway. There was a mention, I think Sonali, she mentioned the fact that they have established a rule somewhere that after 9 o'clock or after 8 o'clock, the buses can just stop anywhere instead of just stopping at the bus stop. Which then significantly like shortens the way home for women who then have to do the last mile. I think this is a really beautiful example because it shows like it's a super easy low-hanging fruit, right? There's no additional money to be paid for this little exchange to be, or this little change to be made, but it's but it really makes a big impact, I believe, because I mean, especially from safety point of view, like bus stops are actually like hotspots for issues, right? So I think, and I really like, I'm very interested in these kind of like low-hanging fruits and let's say easy to establish findings. So if anybody can share more of them, I'm really happy to hear them.
Aravinda, I see you have your hand up. Would you like to share?
Hi, everyone. I am from WRI India, and I work in the space of gender and mobility. So I have 2 points to add to this. I can't say this issue is unique to India, but it might be more pronounced in India given the proportion of the people who are in low-income segments. So there's a huge social background to expecting women in public spaces, and there's so one of the first things that happened when any of the states, any of the examples that Sonali and Sarika shared, where free public transport was introduced, was this whole backlash that why are women alone given this privilege of traveling for free, and this sense of this notion of them being afforded this free ticket on the back of taxpayers' money, which comes exclusively from men. So there's a good deal of sensitization that has to happen. So sensitization formally is being taken up. Transport workers, crew members are being sensitized, but then there's a good deal amount of awareness that needs to be created as to why women's trips inherently cost more than an equivalent trip by man because of the travel choices they make that need to be more comfortable or that need to match their timings. So this is one instant that I wanted to add to it. Here's one solution which I think may be unique to India or countries where paratransit or intermediate public transport is more common. So we have the auto rickshaws or the tuk-tuks that may be the equivalent in other countries, which are which bridge this gap between private vehicle, which is very flexible, and public transport, which is affordable. So now these intermediate public transport, the auto rickshaws or the share autos, they they make these shorter trips, which is perfect for trip chaining or multiple stops. They are in some of the versions or variants, which is like the e-rickshaws, are quite affordable. They can be compared to, the fare of the public transport. So focusing and strengthening this as a last mile or first mile connectivity, a lot of the major public transport networks will bridge one of the bigger gaps. And also we're starting to see more women becoming part of that workforce, where they're entering as drivers, and with vehicles transitioning to electric vehicles, it's becoming easier for them to get trained and start using it. So that's one area of mobility that we're starting to see more women, and we should definitely focus a little more to make it grow.
Great. Thanks for those examples. I think that's super helpful to keep in mind in terms of the complexity of public transport options, as we discussed a bit in the webinar, but as you've just pointed out, Aravinda, thank you for that. With that, we are pretty much at time. So thank you for those that provided some context afterwards. If you'd like to stay in touch, Julia has been so helpful as to put the email and social media contacts in the chat. And otherwise, we look forward to potentially continuing this with new episodes, and I'm going to pass it on to Julia from here.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for moderating this session, and thanks everyone for being here. I just quickly want to reiterate that we are looking into the possibility to have more sessions in this webinar series on gender and mobility. So some of you have already shared ideas for further topics, but please don't hesitate to reach out to us also via email or on social media. And just want to advertise, because a lot of you are working in the field of gender and mobility, that Women Mobilize Women is currently preparing a new platform called the Global Alliance for Feminist Transport, where we want to connect all these dots, make your work more visible, and just give everyone a quick and easy overview of all the amazing global activities going on in this space of feminist transport planning. So I will also share a blog article on our plans in the chat, and look forward to hearing from you if you have any suggestions or ideas for that. And stay tuned for the launch coming soon, and have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Great preparation.
Bye.